Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We just got done finished talking about the game 2 between the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers of the Stanley Cup Final. Now we're moving on to the Leon Draisaitl's hit on Alexander Barkov and the Sam Carrick slash on Dmitry Kulikov that got both of those guys in a little bit of trouble with the league. However, only one of them took disciplinary action, and it was Sam Carrick that took the disciplinary action. But the bigger story here is Leon Draisaitl. This is the bigger story because we are talking about the two biggest names, or two of the biggest names in this entire series. Leon Draisaitl and Alexander Barkov are two of the top four players on these teams. So very touchy moment this was for the NHL Player Safety Committee to try to figure out what to do with this. Because here is what happened, right? Let me paint the picture for you. Leon Draisaitl definitely left his feet going in for a hit for Alexander Barkov, and he does make contact with his head. And as Alexander Barkov kind of embraces and he takes a shot with outstretched arms from Leon Draisaitl to Alexander Barkov, but it hits like the initial point of contact here and it gets up to his head, right? So what do you do if you're the NHL Player Safety Committee? Here's the problem. Alexander Barkov left the game after this and he did not return. That is the Florida Panthers' best defensive forward and potentially best player on their ice, depending on who you ask. And then it's, on the other hand, it's Leon Draisaitl, the second best player in hockey, maybe third best player. If you rate McKinnon higher than Draisaitl, that's fine. But for me, the second best player in all of hockey. So what do you do if you're the NHL Player Committee? Because this is the Stanley Cup Final, and Alexander Barkov might miss Game 3 here because of an injury. He just had to leave. So what they decided to do was not give Draisaitl a suspension, and I think that might be the right decision here. Here's the thing in this decision, and here's the thing with making a call like this. You are not... This is different than a regular season moment, and you have to take the moment into account when you're making this decision, and that's why we have a committee to make this decision instead of rules and a ruling that is the letter of the law for all situations, because there are moments that are different, right? And this is definitely a moment that's different here. Leon Draisaitl doesn't intend to injure Alexander Barkov on this play. And I think you are silly if you think that he is intending to injure anybody on this play. So intent to injure does come into effect here. And then, along with that, it is the Stanley Cup Finals. This probably is definitely a different ruling if it is in the regular season. I've definitely seen guys get suspended for hits like this in a regular season. But this isn't the regular season. There aren't 82 chances to play the game. This is the Stanley Cup Final where you need to win 4 games or you are known as the Stanley Cup Final losers and runner-ups for the rest of eternity, and your name is cemented in the wrong side of history. For these guys, these moments in this game and being able to play means so much. And not being able to play because of a hit you made that, you could go either way with it, because he does initially make the contact to the shoulder area. I mean, you can see on a lot of these screenshots that Alexander Barkov has his face turned to the glass here, and Leon Draisaitl's neck is here, so a little bit getting into the neck area, but it's not there. It's not in the neck area, so it's hard for the NHL Player Safety Committee, and I don't envy the decision that any of them had made, because especially in Florida, this is the wrong decision in their minds. Of course it is, but in Edmonton they're loving it, so it's hard. Now, for the fallout of this play, Alexander Barkov is still questionable for Game 3. We'll find out more tomorrow. He did skate today, which is very good news for the Florida Panthers. He did get warm-up skates in where he was in full gear. He didn't have any troubles today, so I would anticipate him playing. This is he is a top 5 player in this entire series. I forget exactly where I ranked him, but I think I had him right at that number 5 slot, if I'm not mistaken. So for the for the Florida Panthers, they're gonna need him, and they definitely need him back. He's been perfect as as help on Connor McDavid and Draisaitl. He's played so much time for these first 2 games. I know Connor McDavid just set a record for most amount of ice time in a Stanley Cup Final with by a forward with, I think he had 29 minutes in that game, which is absolutely ridiculous for a forward to do. But for Alexander Barkov, he is needed by these Florida Panthers. He won the Selke Trophy for a reason, and it is a good reason. He is definitely the best defensive forward in hockey, so for him, they need him back. We'll see if he comes back. I know he is questionable for Game 3, and that could be a huge loss, but I don't anticipate him being out. I think it is kind of similar to what we're seeing in the NBA Finals with Luka Doncic being listed as questionable, but there's no way in the world that Luka Doncic misses the finals, and there's no way in the world that Alexander Barkov is going to miss the Stanley Cup Final. I mean, this is what you play for your entire life, the game of hockey, to be in. So I expect him to be back. Now, talking about the other hit, Sam Carrick / on Dmitry Kulikov. This was a little bit dirtier. However, Dmitry Kulikov gave him a run to Sam Carrick when Sam Carrick didn't have the puck. It was just a straight up interference that should have been called, and it was just completely missed by the official. So Sam Carrick runs over and gets into it a little bit with Dmitry Kulikov, ends up sending his stick into the groin area of Dmitry Kulikov. He does get sent off the ice for this. He gets 2 for slashing, and now in the aftermath, he gets fined the maximum you can. It's a little bit over $2,000 with the collective bargaining agreement between these players and the association. So the NHL was able to fine him the maximum amount, and I think it is a good call. You can't be slashing a guy with a stick in his groin. That is a line. We don't cross that line. He paid the price for it. Quite literally paid the price for it. So we're gonna see Sam Carrick. He didn't get suspended. We're gonna see every guy besides maybe Alexander Barkov. A couple of injury reports as well with all of this. Darnell Nurse was listed as questionable. I didn't see him get banged up in Game 2, but he was listed questionable in the skate around this morning. So we'll see what comes from that. Maybe a little bit of addition from subtraction, but I don't know. I'm just the reporter. I don't like Darnell Nurse. I don't think he's that great of a player. He gets paid way too much money for being the level that he plays at. That's my take on it. You guys are well aware of it. But along with Darnell Nurse, I also saw that Aaron Ekblad was a full participant in morning skates this morning, which is great news for the Florida Panthers. He, of course, left for a little bit during that Game 2 with an ankle injury. I believe it was him and McDavid that got a little tied up in the back of the net on the Florida Panthers side. In that Game 2, he ended up rolling his ankle. He does return in that Game 2, and he was a full participant, so expect Aaron Ekblad to be 100% for tomorrow's Game 3 back in Edmonton. But yeah, just it was a very chippy game kind of at the end of it, but really midway through it. It was also, I believe it was Warren Foegele that had a knee-to-knee on the Florida Panthers that got him a game misconduct, and it was very warranted. That was a 5-minute major in the first period. That was kind of negated from a Oliver Ekman-Larsson trip that the Edmonton Oilers scored on a 4-on-4. But nonetheless, I believe Warren Foegele will be back in the Edmonton Oilers lineup for Game 3. I did see that they shook up their lines a little bit going into Game 3 as well. It is looking like it's going to be the same first line, but they're trying to figure out that second line, and for Game 3, they're going with Ryan McLeod, who has been on their third line for it. They're going with Ryan McLeod onto that second line next to Draisaitl on that left wing spot, and it's going to be still Dylan Holloway on that right wing slot. They have been using Evander Kane throughout most of the season up in that top 6, but have elected to go with Adam Henrique in Game 2, and then in Game 3, now they're going with Ryan McLeod. So shaking it up a little bit are the Edmonton Oilers in their line combinations, trying to figure out how to get Leon Draisaitl going, as he is a very big factor when it does come to these Edmonton Oilers, and they definitely need him, probably a little bit desperately need him to kind of perform like his, regular season self, or like his Vancouver series self, where he was absolutely the front runner to win the Conn Smythe. Of course, falling off a little bit to Connor McDavid. But this Edmonton Oilers team needs to figure out how to get that offense going. Having Leon Draisaitl not suspended for the Game 3 is a huge point of emphasis for these Edmonton Oilers. Whatever you think of the hit, the Edmonton Oilers are going to use it as a new lease on life a little bit. Having him stay in the lineup instead of being out for the Game 3. I mean, without Leon Draisaitl, it would be very hard for this team to win against this Florida Panthers team, even with Connor McDavid playing at the level that he does play at. Without Leon Draisaitl, it would be so hard for them. And then you're down 3-0 if you do take a loss in that game, and that would spell depth on this on this series and on this season for the Edmonton Oilers. So they're looking forward to playing that Game 3 back in Edmonton. It is an absolute must-win game for the Edmonton Oilers. You can't go down 3-0 in a series like this, especially when you have to play back in Florida twice. So we'll see how they play tomorrow. I will be giving you my picks and predictions on that in the fifth and final segment of the night. But that'll wrap it up for our talk on Leon Draisaitl and Sam Carrick's hits and what I thought about them for that Game 2. We're going to move on to our third segment of the night, and one that I'm excited to talk about, the 2024 Mock Draft Part 1. We're going from 30 to 21 in this one. I'm excited to get to that, so we're going to go right into our second break.